Welcome back. This is a review for Fruits Basket Season 2, Episode 24/49. This episode is split into two parts. Which I'm going to go over the first part first, obviously, which is more so deals with Machi and kind of getting to see what her perspective on things are a little bit. It's kind of all centered around the student council going out to a restaurant on the weekend because kind of to celebrate that they pretty much finally got caught up with all their work that they had been behind on. But you get to see Machi's perspective of things and being kind of unsure of how to feel about stuff and just about herself in general. She's very much so, as we see in the episode, she's kind of very reminiscent of a early Yuki in that she really doesn't know how to feel or how to think about herself. She can only really think negatively about herself. She can't really see herself in a positive light, in a sense, because she's kind of been told or experienced life in a way that made it seem like all there was to her was negative things, as we kind of see with her relationship with her mom. And again, you don't get a whole lot of information, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about everything because, again, I know the manga, I know what happens. I know what her backstory is, so we haven't gotten there yet. We only got a small glimpse of it, in that we know that, like with Kakeru, as he said previously, a good couple episodes ago, that like they're both, her mom and his mom kind of had them fighting each other, in a sense fighting, but they were kind of going back and forth they're in a competition, that's the word I was looking for. They were in a competition with each other. Their parents forced them to be in a competition with each other in order to be like, oh, this is the one that should be the true heir to the family. And Kakeru, as he had said, he broke off from that, but he realized, he kind of made the observation that Machi may not actually be, she might still be caught up in that entire thing of which their parents were, both their moms were doing. And we get to see a little bit of that, at least in a sense, because we see Machi go to her apartment and we see that it's very, very messy. Reminds us of a certain Rat Boys room. And she gets a phone call from her mom, and her mom. It's not that, like, you can kind of tell from the relationship between her and her mom that they're not very close. They're very disconnected. That Machi doesn't really say a whole lot in the conversation, but from what we can get, it's mainly the mom talking. But she's like, oh, hey Machi, were you out running around and having fun? And Machi's like, no, I was with the student council. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that you're still doing that sort of thing. And then Machi kind of remained quiet, and her mom's like, oh, you're still you haven't changed, you're still the dull and very boring girl you've always been. And again, kind of what I was going back before, is that she's kind of been told that she's dull and boring, and that's what Machi very much so thinks about herself. That's the perspective which she has of herself, that she's a very dull and very boring person, and that any interests that she may have are most likely also dull and boring. So, like, going back to when Yuki asked her, the beginning portion of the episode, when Yuki asked her, or even further back next, it's actually just a flashback, when saying, oh, what's your favorite color? What color do you like? And Machi's like, I don't know how to respond to this. Yuki asked me such strange questions. I don't know how to respond to them. And then, as well as when they were deciding where to go for the lunch, or for the little restaurant or whatever, when Yuki asked her, hey, what place do you want to go to? She didn't know how to respond to it. She's like, it's, don't worry about it. It's none of your concern. But what place I would want to go to. And of course, Yuki's kind of response to this is, I want to see what the world looks like through your eyes. I want to see how you see things. Which Machi gets very confused about, because she's like, I barely understand myself, let alone the world. Or, correction, flip that. I barely understand the world, let alone myself. So I like. So she doesn't know how to respond to anything of these things because again, she thinks of herself as a very dull and boring person, and so again, like with her being like when Yuki asks her, what her favorite, well, what restaurant would she like to go to, when she says, oh, it's none of, don't worry about what place I like, it's none of your concern. It's I'd interpret that as less of her being standoffish and more of her being like, even if I told you like what what a restaurant, I like to eat at is, it probably isn't something that's interesting. It's probably considered a boring restaurant. Because she has this, because the fact that she's been told all her life that she's boring, and it, so like it's interesting because you get some of these in anime. You'll get characters who and they're typically like the stoic or like the super smart kid who like they're like typically their past is they didn't really have much of a childhood, and so it's like sometimes a villain character too, who it's like, oh, they don't really know the answer to simple things because not because they never really thought about it before, but because they found it unnecessary. That kind of, and that, oh, I'm not worried about that. So that stuff is below me, type of thing. But in Machi's cases, even if she has thought of those answers before, she can't really give them because one, it wasn't part of something that her mom had said, hey, you need to go and work towards and try to be perfect at this or perfect at that or whatever. Um, but it's also just because of the fact that her mom calls her dull and boring and that she kind of sees herself as that way as well. She she thinks that her interests are also dull and boring, even though they may not be. There probably aren't. Well, I know that they aren't. But it's like, and that's just the mindset of which when you're in that kind of mindset of when you're told that, like, and I guess try to follow me here, I guess, but like when you're in the mindset of being, told that, oh, you're a very dull and a very boring person, and that you're not interesting or whatever. There's nothing interesting or special about you. You kind of get in the mindset that anything of which you like is probably also dull and boring and uninteresting. And so when people ask you, oh, hey, what do you like? What color do you like? What place do you like to eat at? What's a hobby you like to do? You don't know how to answer, or you might be too ashamed to answer because you think that, well, those things are, if I'm dull and boring, then my interests are probably also dull and boring. And so if I give an answer, it's probably just going to confirm to other people that I'm also dull and boring. Even though that's not the case at all. It's because it, she's not in any way, Machi is not in any way dull or boring. She is a fun character, and you get to see that with her little interaction with Yuki in a little near the end of her half of the episode, which is probably the most like varied emotion that we've gotten out of her so far. But it's so much fun. But going back, I thought of that scene anyway. But yeah, she thinks of herself that way. She thinks of herself in a very negative way, and so she thinks the things that she likes are negative, even though they aren't. As she's traveling to the train station, she's thinking to herself, I don't really understand the world, let alone myself. I like, I just don't. Am I the one invisible, or is everyone else invisible? Does anyone really see me? Am I really needed in this world? Does anyone would really want to really care if I was gone? And right as she's kind of thinking this, am I really needed? Yuki shows up and he's like, "Oh, hey, here you are, Machi. I'm so glad that I found you. I was a bit worried. I was early, so I was a bit worried, and it just like completely like completely, but also literally just knocks her to her feet because it's something that, again, she's starting to think that, oh, maybe I'm not really necessary in this world, that I'm not needed. And then here comes, and that maybe I'm invisible, and that, maybe, no one really notices me, maybe I'm not needed. And as she's thinking all these things, Yuki shows up and he's like, no, I see you, I found you, I'm glad that you're here. Even though he was more so saying it in the context of, oh, hey, you arrived at this station. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that I found you because I thought might be a little bit too early. I went to the wrong place. But it still means, it's kind of a double meaning, but it still, I can't think of the word. Resonates, that's the word. Resonates kind of the same feeling, and it's such a sweet moment. And then of course you get the hilarity of, once she falls to the ground, she drops her bag, and Yuki's helping her pick things up, and he happens to pick up the maple leaf that he had given her, which she had actually turned into a bookmark. She had like laminated and kind of given it a backing and whatnot. And now for Yuki, I'm pretty sure for Yuki this is actually something that he really appreciates, because it's something that, knowing that this is knowing what his past self is like, seeing something of which he gave someone, even if it's just a small little token, to see that it actually is being appreciated and treasured by someone, I know that means a lot to Yuki. And of course, Machi just freaks out. She's like, "No, it's not this. It's not the leaf." And he's like, "Oh, I guess it's a different one." But it's like, "But it might be." It's just, you get the hilarious scene of Machi going back and forth, being like she's being too shy and awkward, and being like, "It is, but it isn't," and it's just so funny. And it's like, "I am treasuring it, but I'm not treasuring it because I smashed it up." And then you get Kakeda, who shows up as like Yuki and Machi are like physically like battling over this maple leaf bookmark. Kakeda's like, should I ask what's going on? Yuki's like, yes, ask what's going on. And it's just a funny scene. And we also finally get the answer to Yuki's question, which of course Yuki obviously gets the answer to as well, which is, Machi, what's your favorite color? And they figure out, oh, it's probably red because the maple leaf is red and the ribbon that she chose is red. And so it's like, oh, Machi likes red, which is, if you remember anything about what the student council or the student defense force colors are, the student defense force members' colors are. Jeez, that's long. You'll know what the double meaning is for that one. Anyway, so we get to the second half of the episode, which there isn't a whole lot to talk about, and but I want to talk about the things that aren't Yuki related first. So we get an absolutely cute scene, mind you, of Toru and Kyo, and Toru buys this scarf with pom poms on it, and she's like, "Look, Kyo, look at my scarf." And he's like, "You're gonna hit someone with those pom poms." She like purposely like smacks them with it, and it's so cute. I'm sorry, but it is. Anyway, but Yuki pretty much decides that he's gonna go to the main house for the one day for the banquet. And Kyo and Toru wind up going to Kazuma's house for New Year's. Of course, Suzu is there as well. And Toru, when she sees the Suzu, she freaks out and like tries to run over there and like run and hug her, and Suzu just like dodges out of the way, and Toru smacks against the wall. And Suzu's like, "Don't do that! You scared me! Don't just run at people!" Like, oh, it's one of those little funny moments in Fruits Basket that I've always loved. But again, there's other things that happen in between, but I'm gonna kind of skip over and talk about the rest of the Kyo Toru stuff first, which is that Kyo and Toru wind up talking about, oh, hey, Kyo winds up explaining to Toru that when he was a kid, he kind of was, he got a little bit jealous of his Suzu because the Suzu came over a lot when she was a kid, and he kind of felt that she might be trying to take Kazuma away from him, so he was kind of jealous of her as a kid. But he's like, but it's fine now, it's no issues, okay? And then of course the little flashback scene with Kyo and Suzu just staring at each other, and Haru just sitting there in the middle like, this is entertaining, this is amazing. Um, but but they wind up talking about wishes, or Tor mentioned, "Oh, hey, what are you gonna wish for New Year's?" And of course, he was like, "Well, you gotta tell me yours if you're gonna ask." And it's like, "Oh, never mind." But Tor thinks to herself, last year I wished for Yuki and Kyo to get along, but this year I really wish for, um, I wish for people to be able to be connected and kind of to be able to break the curse, and for, in a sense, dreams to come true. Um, and the people to be able to meet the people which they want to meet. Which I will say this, and this is again with Crunchyroll and their weird translations this entire season. They've been hit or miss. They've been either really good or they've been really good pretty much like 95% of the time, but then they'll have this random instant of just bad translation. So there's actually two instances of this in this episode. So the first one is actually the bigger one, but I'm going to talk about the smaller one first, which happens during the Toru thing, where you see like Momiji give Kureno the DVD copy of the play, and during that, Toru says something, but like there's no text dialogue. There's like no text. There's no subtitles to show you what she said. It's just there's no subs. It's still like that on the Crunchyroll player. I'm like, okay, okay, whatever, okay. I don't know what she said, but I'd assume it was only maybe something very short, but they missed something. She said a word, and then they just never translated it. But the other big translation error of this episode is when Haru is leaving the banquet, he kind of sneaks out, and Shigure kind of is like, oh, hey, he's seeing kind of Haru off. And after Haru leaves, alright, so what Shigure says and what it's now been corrected to is something along the lines of, oh, Akito, if only you knew, or if only you could learn, if only you could learn a lesson, or something like that. But originally, when this episode came out, it had a really bad translation error, which was they had Shigure say, "Oh, Akito, if only you would teach everyone a lesson," which was like, whoa there! That is not what Shigure said. Excuse me. That's a completely different. That is nowhere near what Shigure just said. That is the complete opposite. Whoa. But yeah, those are the two big translations. Thankfully, one of them has been fixed, the big one. But the minor one still hasn't been fixed. I don't understand. Maybe one day they'll fix it in the future. I don't know. Either way, but that's kind of the little minor things. Anyway, the bigger thing that happened this episode would be the middle portion, which is Yuki, and so they're all at the banquet, and Yuki is sitting next to Akito, and Akito's like, oh, I'm glad that you finally decided to come back to me this time without giving me much hassle or, problem. I'll forgive you for that. And when Akito says that, Yuki's like, you know what, Akito, in a sense, he kind of stands up to Akito a little bit, but not in a, like, physical, like, oh, I'm going to beat you up type of way, but in a, Akito, I decided that I'm going to start moving forward in my life, and I'm going to forgive you for the things that you've done and said to me. And I know I have a lot of issues, and I know I have a lot of problems. I know I have a lot of things that I still need to work on, but I'm going to stop blaming people for things that aren't maybe their fault, or things that are out of their control, or things that are out of my control, or I'm going to stop blaming people for things just because things don't go the way I want them to. And Akito flips out over this, just completely freaks out of this, and takes a vase and smashes it over Yuki's head, which is, fun. And not in a good way. And of course, but thankfully Kureno was there and stopped Akito. And Akito's going to apologize, and Yuki does so, and Akito kind of storms off. And then Negami is like, runs up to him, and it's like, don't die on me! Yuki's like, calm down. And Tori's like, just bring him here, just fix him up. But you also get this very sweet conversation between Yuki and Hattori. And Yuki's like, hey, I need to apologize to you too, Hattori, because I think I probably blamed you for what happened in the past with you having to erase my friend's memories, which we see a little bit earlier that yeah, Hattori does kind of have a soft spot for Yuki because of that incident. But Yuki's like it's not your fault. You were just doing what your job was, and you couldn't do anything about that. And you too yourself were also hurt at the time and got hurt obviously later on. So I can't. I'm gonna stop blaming you, and I'm sorry if I did blame you and make you, I guess, uh, pity would be the right word, but yeah, kind of pity me or try to. I can't think of where I'm going with this one. It was in my head and then it flew away. um, but yeah, so you get these very sweet scenes of Yuki kind of taking the final step, I'd say, to really actually, really starting to move forward and um, kind of accept, not really accept, but really kind of start to become, partially become his final form, you could say, that he's really actually taking the steps to properly move forward, especially from Akito. Um, and it's so sweet. It's such a great episode. But that's really about it. Next week is the final episode of season 2, which is so sad. No, I don't want it to end already. but but then but it's also next week's episode is gonna be quite fun. It's gonna be a doozy. That's all I'm gonna say. It's gonna be interesting. Anyway, so thanks for watching and bye for now.